November 12, 1943. 28,000 feet above the Solomon Islands, a 21-year-old farm boy from Iowa was about to break every rule of aerial combat ever written. His name was Robert M. Hanson, and he was flying a Chance Vought F4U Corsair, a plane so dangerous that Navy carrier pilots refused to fly it. They called it the Ensign Eliminator, the Widowmaker. Its long nose made it impossible to see the runway during landing. Its massive engine torqued so violently on takeoff that it would flip inexperienced pilots into the ocean. It had already killed dozens of American pilots during training. The Navy had rejected it. But the Marines? They took it anyway. Hanson sat in the cockpit of this mechanical beast, his hands steady on the controls. Below him, stretched across 10 miles of empty blue Pacific, was a formation of Japanese aircraft heading toward the American positions at Bougainville. 50 enemy planes, fighters and bombers. A full strike package, designed to obliterate the Marine positions on the ground. Hanson's squadron had 12 Corsairs, 12 against 50. The odds were suicidal. The doctrine was clear. Wait for reinforcements. Coordinate with other squadrons. Don't engage alone. But Robert Hanson wasn't thinking about doctrine. He was thinking about rabbits. Not the enemy. Actual rabbits. Because before Robert Hanson was a Marine Corps fighter pilot, before he was an ace, before he was anything the military-industrial complex could recognize, he was just a kid on a dirt farm in Lucknow, India, where his Methodist missionary parents had dragged him when he was 6 months old. And on that farm, surrounded by poverty, disease, and endless horizons, young Bobby Hanson learned to hunt. He learned to shoot, and most importantly, he learned to see. This is not a story about technology. This is not a story about superior engineering or better tactics or brilliant strategy. This is a story about 3 guns, 11 days, and a farm boy who understood something the experts had completely missed. This is the story of how one man's childhood on a forgotten farm halfway around the world would lead to the most devastating 11-day killing spree in the history of aerial combat. Robert Murray Hanson was born in Lucknow, India, on February 4, 1920. His parents, Robert and Eunice Hanson, were Methodist missionaries who had dedicated their lives to spreading the gospel in one of the most unforgiving regions on earth. This wasn't suburban comfort. This was colonial India during the British Raj, a place of crushing heat, monsoon floods, and diseases that killed children without mercy. Bobby Hanson grew up in a world where survival wasn't guaranteed, where you learned to be tough, or you didn't learn anything at all. The Hanson family lived on a small farm attached to the mission. There was no electricity, no running water. The nearest hospital was a day's journey away. When Bobby was 7 years old, his father handed him a .22 caliber rifle and told him something that would echo through the cockpits of 40 dead Japanese pilots years later. Don't waste ammunition. Make every shot count. The farm wasn't just Bobby's home, it was his classroom. The textbook was written in dirt, blood, and hunger. His father needed meat for the mission. The local markets were unreliable. So Bobby, along with his older brother, was sent out into the scrubland with a rifle and a handful of bullets to hunt whatever they could find. Rabbits, mostly. Wild dogs. Occasionally, a deer. The rule was simple and brutal. If you miss, the family doesn't eat. This is where the modification begins. Not in a factory, not in a laboratory, not in some engineer's blueprint. It begins in the mind of a 7-year-old boy staring down the barrel of a rifle at a rabbit zigzagging through the thorns 50 yards away. The rabbit doesn't run straight. It jinks left, then right, then freezes, then explodes into motion again. A normal kid would aim at the rabbit. Bobby Hanson learned to aim at the ghost of where the rabbit was going to be. It's called instinctive shooting, deflection targeting. leading the target. Whatever you want to call it. It's the same skill that separates a hunter from someone who just makes noise. By the time Bobby was 12, he could hit a running rabbit at 70 yards without using the rifle's sights. He didn't calculate windage or trajectory in his head. He didn't need to. His brain had learned to do it automatically, the same way a pianist's fingers find the keys without thinking. This wasn't marksmanship. This was something deeper. This was predatory instinct, honed over thousands of shots, thousands of missed meals, thousands of moments where failure meant hunger. And then, in 1937, when Bobby was 16, the Hanson family returned to the United States. They settled in Newtonville, Massachusetts. Bobby was pulled out of the Indian scrubland and dropped into an American high school. He was a foreigner in his own country. He spoke English with a slight accent. His classmates thought he was strange, too quiet, too serious. He didn't play football. He didn't go to dances. He spent his free time in the woods, hunting. Always hunting. He graduated high school in 1938 and enrolled at Hamline University in Minnesota. He was studying to be a minister. Following in his father's footsteps, he was going to save souls. Then, on December 7, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Bobby Hanson's path changed forever. When Bobby Hanson walked into the Marine Corps recruiting office in St. Paul, Minnesota, in January 1942, he was 21 years old, rail-thin, and spoke with the calm, measured tone of a missionary's son. The recruiter looked at him and saw cannon fodder, just another farm boy who would wash out in basic training. But Hanson had one thing the recruiter didn't expect. He could fly. During his time at Hamline, Bobby had joined the Civilian Pilot Training Program, a government initiative designed to build a reserve of pilots in case of war. He had logged over 50 hours in single-engine trainers. He had his private pilot's license. He wasn't just some kid off the street. He was a pilot. The Marines took him. Hanson breezed through basic flight training. His instructors noted that he had an unusual calmness in the cockpit, a preternatural ability to stay focused under stress. But what really caught their attention was his gunnery scores. During air-to-air gunnery training, where trainee pilots fired at a towed target sleeve, Hanson's accuracy was off the charts. He didn't just hit the target. He shredded it. His instructors asked him how he was doing it. He shrugged and said, "It's just like shooting rabbits." They didn't understand. They thought he was joking. In August 1943, Hanson was assigned to Marine Fighting Squadron 215, VMF 215, based at Munda Airfield in the Solomon Islands. The squadron was equipped with the Chance Vought F4U Corsair. And Hanson saw it for the first time, sitting on the tarmac like a crouched predator. The Corsair was a beast. It had a 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney radial engine, the most powerful engine ever mounted on a fighter at that time. It had an inverted gull wing that gave it a menacing, predatory silhouette, and it was armed with 650 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, 3 mounted in each wing. The Navy had tested it and declared it too dangerous for carrier operations. The long nose made visibility on landing nearly impossible. The torque from the massive engine made it unpredictable on takeoff. Dozens of pilots had died in training accidents. The Navy sent the Corsairs to the Marines, essentially saying, "You deal with it." The Marines loved it, because once you got the Corsair into the air, once you mastered its vicious tendencies, it was the fastest, toughest, most heavily armed fighter in the Pacific. It could outrun a Zero in a dive. It could absorb punishment that would shred a Wildcat. And those 650 caliber guns? They fired a combined 3,600 rounds per minute. When you pressed the trigger, it was like holding a chainsaw made of lead and fire. But here's the thing. Most pilots couldn't use that firepower effectively. The Corsair's 6 guns were spread across the wings, 3 in each wing. The convergence point, the place where all 6 streams of bullets met in the air, was set at 300 yards. If you fired at a target closer than 300 yards, your bullets would spread out. If you fired at a target farther than 300 yards, your bullets would cross and spread again. You had a tiny, 3-dimensional cone of space where all 6 guns would hit the same target. Miss that cone, and you'd waste ammunition, maybe score a few hits, but nothing fatal. The doctrine said, close to 300 yards, fire a 2 to 3 second burst, disengage. That's what they taught in gunnery school. That's what the manuals said. Robert Hanson read the manual, then he threw it away. November 12, 1943. Hanson and his squadron lifted off from Munda Airfield at 06:30 hours. Their mission: intercept a large Japanese formation heading for the Marine positions at Bougainville. Intelligence estimated at least 50 enemy aircraft. The squadron commander, a cautious veteran named Major Robert Owens, gave the standard briefing. Stay in formation. Don't chase. Conserve ammunition. We're outnumbered. We need to disrupt the bombers and get out. Hanson listened. He nodded. He climbed into his Corsair, number 23, and took off. The 12 Corsairs climbed to 28,000 feet and headed northwest. At 07:15, they spotted the enemy formation. It was bigger than intelligence had reported. 70-plus aircraft. Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, escorted by Mitsubishi A-6M-0s. The bombers were flying at 20,000 feet. The Zeros were stacked above them at 25,000. Hanson's squadron was outnumbered 6-1. Major Owens gave the order: attack the bombers. Ignore the fighters. Hit and run. The Corsairs dove. Hanson was on the left flank of the formation. His job was to cover the attack, keep the Zeros off his squadron mates' backs. He saw the enemy formation spread out below him like a school of fish. He saw the Zeros start to peel off to intercept. And then he did something that nobody expected. He broke formation. He dove alone, his Corsair screaming down at over 400 miles per hour, straight into the heart of the Japanese formation. His wingman, a young lieutenant named Bill Case, screamed into the radio. "Butcher! Butcher! Get back here!" Butcher was Hanson's call sign. He didn't respond. Hanson's Corsair punched through the Zero screen. The Japanese pilots, trained to intercept coordinated attacks, didn't know what to do with a single plane diving through them at maximum speed. Hanson didn't dogfight. He didn't turn. He fell through the formation like a falcon through a flock of pigeons. He picked his target, a Betty bomber flying straight and level at 20,000 feet. He rolled his Corsair inverted, dove underneath the bomber, pulled up behind it, and opened fire. But here's where the modification happened, where the magic of the farm came alive. Hanson didn't fire at the bomber. He fired at where the bomber was going to be. He pulled his nose up slightly, leading the target by 3 full plane lengths, and fired a 4-second burst. His 650 caliber guns roared. 240 rounds poured out of his wings. The stream of bullets traveled through empty air, then intersected perfectly with the bomber's flight path. The Betty flew directly into the wall of lead. The bullets ripped through the cockpit, the fuel tanks, the wing spar. The bomber exploded in a massive fireball. Hanson rolled away, dove again, and picked another target. A Zero dove on him from above, trying to get on his 6. Hanson didn't turn to fight. He pulled into a steep climb, his Corsair's massive engine roaring, and fired straight up into the empty sky. The Zero, committing to its dive, flew directly into the stream. Its engine disintegrated. The plane fell, tumbling end over end. In the span of 90 seconds, Hanson had shot down 2 enemy aircraft. He had used 8 seconds of trigger time. He had fired fewer than 500 rounds, and he had done it by aiming at ghosts. By shooting at the space where his targets were going to be, not where they were. It was the same skill he had learned hunting rabbits in India. Lead the target. Fire early. Let them fly into the bullet stream. Don't chase. Predict. The Japanese formation scattered. The Zeros, confused and panicked by the lone Corsair, tearing through their ranks, abandoned the bombers and tried to hunt Hanson. He dove away, his Corsair accelerating to over 450 miles per hour, a speed no Zero could match. He returned to Munda Airfield, landed, and climbed out of his cockpit. His crew chief stared at the gun camera footage. 2 kills. 8 seconds. The squadron commander demanded an explanation. How did he do it? Hanson shrugged and said, I just shot where they were going to be. Nobody understood. They thought it was instinct. Luck. They didn't realize it was a lifetime of training, encoded into muscle memory on a farm 10,000 miles away. What happened next wasn't war. It was slaughter. Between November 12th and November 23rd, 1943, Robert Hanson flew 24 combat missions. In 11 days, he shot down 40 Japanese aircraft. 40. Not estimated, not probable. Confirmed kills, verified by gun camera footage and witness reports. The numbers are almost impossible to believe. That's an average of 3.6 kills per day. Some missions, he shot down nothing. Other missions, he destroyed 5 planes in a single flight. The Japanese called him the Butcher of the Solomons. His own squadron called him Butcher Hanson. The name stuck. November 13th. Hanson shot down 4 Zeros in a single mission. He expended less than 800 rounds total. November 15th. He destroyed 3 Betty bombers and 2 Zeros, 5 kills in 1 day. November 20th. He shot down 6 aircraft, 4 Zeros, and 2 Vals in a single morning patrol. His gun camera footage from that day shows something terrifying. Every single kill was achieved with a single burst of fire. No long, wasteful sprays. Just short, precise bursts of 2 to 4 seconds. Each burst perfectly placed in the future position of the target. It was surgical. It was efficient. It was inhuman. The Japanese High Command began to notice. Radio intercepts from Japanese pilots mentioned a single Corsair that attacked alone, that didn't dogfight, that killed from impossible angles. The Japanese aces, veterans of Pearl Harbor and the Philippines, were baffled. They said the American pilot wasn't following any doctrine they had ever seen. He didn't turn. He didn't chase. He appeared, fired, and vanished. They said he was shooting at them before they even knew he was there. They were right, because Hanson wasn't aiming at them. He was aiming at the ghosts of where they were going to be. By November 23rd, Hanson's kill count stood at 40. He had become the highest-scoring Marine Corps ace in the Pacific Theater in just 11 days. His Corsair, number 23, was covered in 40 small Japanese flags, 1 for each kill. His gun barrels were worn down from the heat. His crew chief begged him to ease up, to conserve his plane. Hanson ignored him. He kept flying, kept hunting. The Japanese sent their best pilots to kill him. They failed. Because you can't kill a ghost. And Robert Hanson had become a ghost. But every ghost pays a price. On November 24th, Hanson woke up with a raging fever. He had contracted malaria, the same disease that had haunted him as a child in India. The doctors grounded him. He was furious. He had just achieved the impossible, and now his own body was betraying him. He spent 2 weeks in a field hospital, shaking with chills, hallucinating, his body burning from the inside. When he recovered, He was transferred back to the United States for a combat rest. He was a national hero. The press called him the greatest fighter pilot in American history. He was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on February 4, 1944, his 24th birthday. The citation praised his extraordinary heroism and indomitable fighting spirit. But Hanson didn't feel like a hero. He felt empty because the war wasn't over, and he wasn't in it. After 6 months of stateside duty, Hanson demanded to return to combat. The Marines, desperate for experienced pilots, sent him back to the Pacific in late 1944. He was assigned to VMF 215 again, now operating from the Marshall Islands. On February 3, 1945, Hanson was leading a strike mission against Japanese positions on Rabaul. His flight of 4 Corsairs dove on a cluster of anti-aircraft positions. Hanson's plane was hit by ground fire. His engine exploded. He tried to pull up, tried to bail out, but his plane was too low, moving too fast. The Corsair slammed into the jungle and exploded. Robert Murray Hanson, the farm boy from India, the hunter of rabbits and zeros, was dead at 24 years old. His body was never recovered. The legacy he left behind was staggering. 40 confirmed kills in 11 days. A Medal of Honor. A legend that would inspire generations of Marine pilots. But the real legacy, the invisible modification that changed aerial combat forever, was the understanding that you don't shoot at your enemy. You shoot at where your enemy is going to be. That lesson, learned by a 7-year-old boy hunting rabbits on a farm in India, became the foundation of modern air combat tactics. It's taught in every fighter pilot school in the world today. Deflection shooting. Leading the target. It's not instinct. It's a skill. A skill learned on a forgotten farm by a forgotten boy who grew up to become the deadliest hunter in the sky. Robert Hanson didn't win the war, but he showed everyone how it could be won. Not with better planes, not with superior numbers, but with the simple, brutal logic of the hunt. Aim where they're going to be. Fire early. Let them fly into the bullets. That's how wars are truly won.